Welcome to the Women in Wealth podcast, brought to you by Regina McCann-Hess, a certified financial planner with over 2 decades of experience. This show is for professional women who want guidance in working towards their retirement vision in learning, building, planning, striving for your dreams, and putting the work in now so that you can pursue your financial independence. Hello, this is Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, we're going to take you on a journey with one of my new friends. And Kathleen, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and what you love about what you do?
Thanks, Regina. I'm so excited to be here today. And hopefully there are a lot of women that will be listening in on this because I have what I call hindsight, which is 2020. I've been around the block a few times, maybe more than others. But I am the CEO of SwitchCard. And I'll tell you a little bit more about our projects as we go on. But my previous work was always in the traditional markets. I was in the credit card business for a long time and then acceded to the bank president of
Wow.
Discover Bank, which
Wow.
at the time that I was there was a large portfolio. And I was the first woman banker to head the 110-year-old at that time Delaware Bankers Association. So I had a lot of opportunities as a woman. Uh, and as time goes on, markets change. And now I'm working in these new digital markets. So that's really exciting. It's very new for most of us. But in a hundreds of year old systems, this is a new market that I think everybody should take a look at.
For sure. And that's so amazing that you made it that far up the ranks in the banking industry, which is predominantly male. So kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you. And what you're doing is the same. It's always been tough in those financial markets for women. A lot of women are in those markets. However, if you look at the numbers of anybody exceeding to those top jobs, even today, generally a woman might get there, but not stay there more than 10 years. But those were predominantly all male markets. I think this is an opportunity at this timing, however, for young women to look at opportunities that are there and take them by the bullhorn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, so I know you're exploring the new realm of things, like you just mentioned. So maybe elaborate a little bit more on what you're doing right now.
Yes, in 2017, someone asked me to put a debit card or a credit card or something at the end of the stream of their exchange in these crypto markets.
Mhm.
And they were one of the largest, I think, Bitcoin miners in the United States. And I said, I've been out of this game for a while in banking, and you probably ought to get a young person. I don't know what you're talking about. But as time went on, very patiently, this miner explained to me these new markets, and I started researching them and looking at everything that was going on in the Web3 area, everything that was going on in blockchain. And over time, I became convinced that, like other things, like the internet, like the microwave that I wouldn't use for years, that I didn't have to know every jot and tittle about how it worked, but I could see that this was going to circle the globe and this was going to be adopted. And, the proof is in the pudding. It has been adopted now by entire countries where they're utilizing these new currencies as part of their management of their currency in their countries. So when I saw that, I also saw what I believed a potential for kind of leveling the playing field, especially in countries where they don't have the instruments that we have to track down even maybe the lines of where the property lines are or other things that they would need a blockchain to keep a record of or a ledger of, and where they don't have a good currency situation. I could see this becoming something that gives opportunity to those who haven't had it before to play in the same markets, but is borderless and is also at the point where individuals can participate, and maybe they didn't have the ability to participate with a traditional banking system.
No, that's true. It's true. It's even in the financial industry, on my side of the financial industry, with broker dealers and RIAs and stuff like that. It's very, very difficult to be able to do, buy or hold or those types of assets.
Yes, yeah. And when you look at some of the places that all of us have traveled on tourism, you see very innovative things happening. Maybe marketplaces that people have built. I was in Kenya a couple of years ago. They build their own little malls and they have wonderful things to sell. But a girlfriend said to me, hurry up and get your project out there because I don't want to carry cash and I don't want to use my traditional card. But if you had a way to trade in these other markets, I would feel safe doing that. And I think that has become one of the hallmarks of equalization. So if you're a family in Kenya that maybe brings in what, $30 a month, let's say that by trading or having this ability to be in these markets brings you an extra 15, that is a life-changing event.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Wow, I can't even imagine um, you know, the ability to add such for us looks like a small increment, but that's a huge increment for somebody living
Absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, life changing, like you said. The ability to feed their family, shelter their family, things that are more difficult with the old style of doing things, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the other things, and I know you've been out there preaching this to women, is a lot of opportunities for women are sometimes bypassed because we're waiting on someone else to do it for us.
Mhm.
We're waiting on information from somebody else, or we're waiting for someone to, kind of give us that push as this is what you need to do. But in reality, waiting is never a good strategy if you want to get something done. You really, I have a little thing on my bathroom counter that says there's only 2 days in the calendar that something can't be done. And one of them is yesterday and the other one's tomorrow. So let's get
Ah,
going today.
nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Really cool. Wow. So you mentioned Kenya and seeing it other places. Are you seeing it being utilized more here in the US versus, obviously versus a couple years ago? And where do you see it going in the future?
In the US, we are behind.
Mhm.
We did not embrace this like the rest of the world did initially. And because of that, surprisingly, the place that you would think innovation is welcome the most, we are behind.
Mm.
Additionally, we have been litigating cases instead of providing regulatory environments or rules for companies to abide by. And there were some bad players in the space. So with all of those things being coming together, the confluence has been overseas. If you'll go to Switzerland, there are entire cantons that are involved in these markets. And as you look around the globe, you will find more progressive regulatory environments, et cetera, in even places like India and places that you didn't think of, but the populace is demanding utilization of these tools. And so we are too here in the United States. A lot of people are asking, do we think that the change of the presidential elections will make a difference? My thought was that no matter who won, that they would have to address these markets because with people like BlackRock and Morgan and all these other people jumping in,
Yeah.
um, even today, the US government owns about $16 billion worth of Bitcoin. You
Mhm.
can't say you don't believe in something and own it and trade it and sell it. That doesn't make any
Mm.
sense.
That's
So
very true.
I am looking forward to the day where the regulatory environment addresses this as its own separate issue. I would hate to see it shoved into one of the 100-year-old institutions we have right now where somebody doesn't understand it. But hopefully, the advisory committees and others that will help the lawmakers um, make these decisions where people are available to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, maybe some of the, I guess, maybe younger camp helpers like aides within those offices who may be able to get an understanding of it a little bit quicker and then bring it back and explain it. And to my oldie brain, right? Translate that to,
Yeah,
how does it work today versus how can it work in the future? And, the language, there's a whole jargon around it, right?
that's
Definitions and
correct.
names and stuff like that. But even with being in the industry, and knowing the limited amount that I do, because I'm not an expert in that area, I still get confused. Like, okay, well, there's crypto, there's Bitcoin, there's, this, there's that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like you need a whole nother language to understand this. So now I know how my clients feel when
Yes.
I talk to them about investments, because that's how I feel.
Absolutely. I mean, there is so much, and it is evolving and emerging as we speak. So, I think if you go back and look at history, I say there's nothing new under the sun. Because if you do go back and you go back far enough, at some point somebody probably traded the clamshell for something else, and somebody traded the beads for this or that.
Right.
Um, and there's always going to be technology differences that will propel us into the future. At one point we said, "Oh yeah, why would anybody try to fly?" If you just go backwards into our history, um, I cannot imagine being somebody in London and saying, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll see you when I see you. When you get to America, write me a letter or whatever." I probably would have been one of the people that said, "Yeah, I'll just stay here in London and yeah, I'll hear from you when I hear from you." There's always going to be innovation. And our question is, how do we adopt it? And how do we make it safe for the consumer in all of these markets, just like you would in a traditional market? When you're making a decision, it's important for you to do your own research. Do not just take a tip unless you have unlimited resources to lose funds.
Mm,
You don't want to take a tip or a call from someone, a friend that says, "Oh, I did this or that." You need to do your own research. That's extremely important. And that is the case in a lot of things, not just in Web3 or the crypto markets. I always have a really important piece of paper, and I don't think I have one sitting here, but it's a blank piece of paper.
okay.
And I take the blank piece of paper, and when I'm trying to make an important decision, I draw a line right down the middle. And on one side it says pros, and on the other side it says cons. And as we discussed earlier, one of the most important things that you can do or skill that you can have is to be able to read. As an American, we don't like to read our terms and agreements. We do not, we just sign everything. It could be 4 pages long or 40 pages long. We just assume everything is hunky dory and we sign it and keep moving along. But I do read everything still, and I do like to do the research on whatever I am planning to purchase in these markets, whether it's $100 or $200,000 that you're going to make a purchase on. You really need to understand the project, because there are a lot of projects out there and they're
Mhm.
all based on different themes. It could be that some are securities, some are not.
Yeah.
Some are just artwork or what they call the meme coins. And so if you don't do that research, you better have unlimited funds, because you don't want to throw your grocery money, your gas money at these things because you haven't done enough research to determine what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, I love it. Do your research. Also, don't invest money into something that you can't afford to lose.
That's right.
And also, you said it better than I am, but it all goes back to bartering. Back to hundreds and thousands of years ago, people would barter, right? So now it's just a different way to barter,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very cool. Very cool. So if people want to learn a little bit more about you and what you're doing, where would they go to find out that information?
Well, I hope you have an opportunity to go look at our website, and that's at switchrewardcard.com. There you'll find out a little bit more about our project and the fact that we are not a security. There is a Switch token. It's all caps, Switch, and you can follow it on Coin Marketplace. On our website, switchrewardcard.com, you'll find that we do sell a software and that produces the Switch token if you purchase the software. And it's one of the most popular in this ecosystem. Every project in this ecosystem has to have a real business behind it. And that for us is Switch Reward Card, which will have a new global prepaid card coming out, Visa or MasterCard, depending on where you're living, in about 60 days.
Oh, wow.
Then we
Wow.
also have business accounts because we think that there will be a great number of businesses wanting to accept crypto. And we provide customer service, which in this market has not been a hallmark. Now, remember, I came from a background where I worked in call centers and we would measure how quickly we could answer the phone. Can we get that down to 30 seconds? That's not a hallmark in customer service anymore because it seems like customer service has gone by the wayside. But
Awful.
one of the things that I think is that everyone who wants to participate, even if it's the grandmother or if it's the graduate from college or high school, may need to have a little assistance, whether it's a ticket or that they send in an email, all the way up to getting the opportunity to speak with someone or do a Zoom. We provide white glove services for those who might need it, especially if we have customers who have purchased some of these instruments and they might have purchased them and never become an expert in the technology. We can do that for you. So for the
Yeah.
business owner, we have a widget that allows you to accept the cryptocurrency and all the way to the back end. If you want to keep it or exchange it for another fiat, we can do that for you.
Hmm.
So we think that all around the opportunity for people is to be able to accept and exchange this for other assets that they're selling.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And it's a whole new level, right? Obviously, that we're getting into and the future. So we'll
Absolutely.
definitely follow you, follow that. It's a very cool topic. But I do want to ask you a question, especially knowing your background. Um, Tell us, your experience or some of the challenges that you have faced as a professional woman.
That is always a question. And I tell you, I started work extremely early when I was in high school. And I was
Mhm.
very fortunate that I could go to work after school. And then I continued with the same company through college. I went to work at one of the largest companies in the United States and have had some global assets at that time, which was Sears Roebuck and Company. And at the time that I went to work there, 1 in 4 Americans worked at Sears. And it was probably the Walmart of its day. It was probably the
Hmm.
largest retailer out there. And over time, I went on to college. I thought I would teach handicapped kids. And I was working on my degree when Sears asked me to go and run a department in another city. And I did take that promotion. But as time went on, I saw that being in a support role in any company did not pay you as well as being the lead. And
Mm.
I made a statement saying, I want out of this support role. I think I'd like to run a store or something of that sort. In the Pacific Northwest and in the regions, they would always send you to what they call a B store, a smaller
Hmm.
market.
Of
And at
course.
that point, I think there was some apprehension to send me to Podunk, Idaho as a single Black female. Uh, but when Discover Card, which Sears created Discover Card, not a lot of people know that, came along. they needed someone in again in a support role. And I said, yeah, I'll go to Chicago and take a look at that subsidiary. It's a risk because I had about 15 years in at Sears, and a lot of people that left the parent company did have that or more, and they went over for this startup. And the Midwest guys are not touchy-feely. They like go over there, make money, or we shut you down in 3 to 5 years. Well, in year number three, we did make a profit, and the chairman of Sears flew out and met us all. But as I matriculated through my career, I did challenge those norms. I wanted to be at the head of something. And I would say, yeah, I love this company and I think I'd like to be the president. And at first, people thought it was funny, but they didn't think it was funny for very long. So when
Mm,
the opportunity came up, and you have to be ready for the opportunity, is the
yeah,
other thing I have to
right.
say to women. You've got to be ready. You've got to have your suitcase packed. You've got to be willing to compete in what is a traditional man's world and role. And I was ready. And when they said, do you mind moving over here and doing this project? I'd say yes. There were a couple of times where I was scared to death and didn't have a clue because I had bluffed my way into the job. But I'm like, I can figure it out once I get there. Um, Being prepared is the most important thing I think you can do as a woman to walk into that board meeting, to walk into any meeting where you'll probably be the only woman in the room.
Yeah.
And for me, every morning, I would have all the newspapers delivered with the Wall Street Journal, the pink sheets, everything that I needed to know because I did not want to walk into that room without knowing everything those guys knew or already had in their heads. And so I always say to women, be prepared, be over prepared. Always walk in knowing that you have that in the back of your head. I think at the first board meeting I attended, my poor CPA stayed up with me all night going over every jot and tittle of any terms that I didn't know. And of course, they didn't go over all those
No,
things,
no.
but I
But
had
you were
no
more
idea.
prepared than anybody else in
I
that
was,
room,
yes.
which is typical of women in business
Yeah.
because they won't even go after a role unless they're like 110% qualified. Whereas guys will submit their put
Yeah.
their hat in the ring for a role that they may have like 50% of the qualifications for. But we need to be more, we need to learn how they're doing it, right? So they're
Yes.
getting these roles. So we need to be a little bit more like that. So good for
Yeah.
you. That's
Yeah. I
awesome. I
heard
love
a
that
speaker
story.
once say, I think it was Les Brown, who said he was applied for a job and he got there and everybody else he felt was better qualified. And then he said to himself, he says, I've got a wife and 6 children. I've got to get this job. So yeah, you're right. And I
True.
think I think all of us need to value our own abilities and our own confidence. There are days where you're going to say something or do something that is not down the line of what everybody else thinks. But if it's really important, you need to stand your ground and explain, to the best of your ability why you feel that way. There were some times when your gut tells you something. And one of the things that I can appreciate about other people is that if you build your reputation, they will listen to your gut and they're like, oh, the last time we didn't listen to her, it went awry. So you got to have that in your pocket and build your own reputation.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So now we're just going to get in that time machine and talk about the future and what's your vision of retirement?
I had retired early. I adopted a child when I was 48.
Oh, good for
And
you.
yeah, for about 2 years, I worked for about 2 more years. And I realized the nannies were raising this child. And I thought, that's not the way to raise a child. And I was retired. I took smaller projects. And, in working at Discover was very fortunate that I could walk away with options and those kinds of things and had a lot of assets that could carry me through the next 20 years or so. I don't know that I'll ever retire because I missed work so badly. However, now that I'm back in this game, I'm like, well, maybe in the next few years, whatever happens in the markets, I will retire. But I do think that I'll always have a foot in the door of business or in um, maybe helping others with their projects. Right now, I am on the board of directors, and we have a meeting tonight of an organization called Who Lives, and we drill water wells in third world countries.
Whoa.
Very successful in that you don't have to have the large trucks to bring in this drill, and it can be hand powered. We do have one that will be electric, but I have gone, when I was in Kenya, I saw them drill a well. A bunch of young guys from their village came in, and by just about doing this, they're talking to their wives and they're drilling the well at the same time. I find it very valuable to be involved in organizations of that type. And in probably the next few weeks, I'll announce also I'm on the board of directors for a group of in Salt Lake who were building a museum to the Polynesians that helped build that temple. They're the ones who hauled the limestone down the mountain. They lived out about 100 miles out, but I have when you're talking about your projects or you're talking about what you're going to do in the future with your assets. I have the hope that my assets will outlive me and my son inherits most of them. And all of us have goals of what we're going to do with those assets, right? But when
Yeah.
you've collected a little bit more than you need, I have church projects and other things that I think I want them to live on past me. And for that rationale, I think when you're making investments, you also want to think about those things because hopefully you do well enough that your assets will go past the time that you're here. And that is where I'm participating a lot these days in projects like Who Lives and in the Polynesian Museum and with my own church to make sure my dad was a deacon. So he would be the guy.
Oh,
He would go up and actually fix the roof himself. He'd buy the furnace, whatever. Well, I don't do those things, but I can write a check and
that's
make
right.
sure that's done. So, I don't know that I'll ever formally retire, but I will move on into other things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, so you're talking about creating your legacy, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I
Love
think
it.
all of us do that in one form or another.
Yeah. And some very, very cool things that you're doing there while you're creating that legacy. So helpful for people.
Yep. I,
So,
I I do believe in that. I believe in things that I do having a social impact. And the blockchain that I participate, all of the blockchains have a social impact. One is called Element, and in that one, um, Scott Lomu, who was on Gold Rush at one point, is encouraging miners not to take things out of the ground, that we could digitize them or hold on to them, or if they do take them out of the ground, to do it in a responsible level and not use child labor and those kinds of things. Another one is about taking our own health back into our hands, and that's Galvin exercising, getting points or rewards for exercising, for watching out for yourself and taking your health back. Um, there is another one called Grow, and I think they're going to have a meeting in Royal City, Washington. I am from the state of Washington, and I'll go up and take a look at that farm. But encouraging organic farming, carbon credits, and those kinds of things. Everyone in this blockchain group has a social impact beyond whatever their token is involved in. So I think that's an important way to consider things when you're looking at your projects.
yeah, that's pretty awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. This has been spectacular. I love learning so much about what you're doing and so, so excited to know you. Thank you so much.
Well, congratulations, Regina. What you're doing is fabulous, and I'll be looking forward to watching more about what you do. And for the women out there who are watching this, do your own research. Take a look at very closely at what you're going to purchase or invest in.
I was going to make that our action item today, and you stole it right out of my mouth. So thank you. That's awesome. We are both saying the action item today is to do your research. Never walk in blindly. Don't let somebody, tell you what you should do the research for yourself so that there's less surprises on the other
Absolutely.
side of it. Well, I want to thank everyone else for joining us. It is really a pleasure to host this show and to meet so many amazing women. This is like, I call it my labor of love because I have so much fun meeting people just like you and, sharing this with our listeners and viewers. So appreciate you being here. And again, everyone, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. My website is forgewealth.com. You can follow me on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram at Forge Wealth and LinkedIn, Regina McCann-Hess. Thank you. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Women in Wealth podcast. You can watch the founder's video I created for you to learn more about me and how I can guide you towards your financial independence at www.forgewealth.com. The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific, individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Forge Wealth Management are separate entities from the LPL Financial. Our show guests and their companies are not affiliated with nor endorsed by LPL Financial, Private Advisor Group, or Forge Wealth Management.